I literally soaked up knowledge, and I just cuffed under mentors, and I just gleaned, and I just extracted like all this intimidating information, everything from proper business etiquette to speech patterns.
And Jay, welcome to the show today.
Oh man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show, man. And you have achieved so much, man. You're a real estate investor. You were a realtor one time. You invest in all kinds of real estate. You were on TV a bunch of times. You're an entrepreneur, a social activist. But man, it wasn't always that way. You came from a pretty dark past. So give a little background on yourself.
Yeah, hey guys, Jay Morrison here, 20-year real estate veteran, but I did get into the industry in an untraditional way. So I grew up thinking that basketball, I grew up in poverty, below the poverty line, to a single mom, 6 of us, and a 2-bedroom. And through that, I decided early that I wanted to be successful. But what I knew of my environment, growing up in New Jersey in the 80s and mid 90s, if it wasn't in sports, if it wasn't through music or rap, it was through the streets. And so a lot of my family were drug dealers. And that's why I actually dropped out of high school at 16 years old and was a drug dealer full time at a point. Went back and graduated high school, but 4 months later landed on Rikers Island in New York, facing 3 years to life in prison for a drug crime. And that didn't correct me, right? It only just taught me more when I went to prison. And so I literally was like committed to the streets for like 10 years of my life, from 15 to 25. And my first real estate interaction was in 1999, where my mom was trying to buy a single family in Somerville, New Jersey for $100,000, and she needed 3% down and didn't have it. And so I was able to be her cash partner and gave her the $3,000 to buy our family's first house in 1999.
You know, it's amazing. You always say you are the average of the 5 people around you. And, you know, if you're growing up in the place you're growing up, well, you're looking around, you're like, oh, I just want to be like these guys. You know,
yeah.
and it works for in a good way or a bad way. Like, I mean, I did not have any kind of environment like you did, but I was never surrounded by entrepreneurs. So I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur until I was in my early 30s. There's no entrepreneur anywhere to be seen around in my entire environment.
We call that the corporate trap, right? You think that's your way out. It's going to be just, you know, I'm gonna go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and I'm gonna, right?
That's the plan, man. That's the plan. That's the only plan I knew. And
that's like the corporate trap. Yeah, for me,
your trap was, I don't know what you call that, but it's also
we call that the corner trap. My trap was the corner trap. So for me, outside of just even like my environment, like the neighborhood around me, my mom was a drug dealer. Like in her early 20s. My stepfather was a drug dealer. He did 13 years in prison, right? My grandfather was the town weed man in the 60s and 70s, right? So that was my environment. That was normal for us, like a family trade, you know, right? So it wasn't that abnormal for me, but it honestly taught me a lot of entrepreneurial skills very early on.
Yeah. So how did you make the shift then? Like, what caused the shift from that life to a different life?
2 things. One was exposure, right? So in 2002, I was 22 years old. I was a 3-time felon by 21 years old. Ended up serving 2.5 years in prison. And in 2002, I was on a parole program in New Jersey. And on that program, one of the mentors was a men's group. We got up on Saturday mornings, and it was like all the felons and all the bad kids. And we had this mentoring session, but the mentor referred me to a mortgage company. He said, you're clean cut, you speak well. My wife's, instead of you working these warehouse jobs or, you know, fighting with the system, working these retail jobs, just to have a job, on parole, you had to keep a job to stay home, right? Just to keep from prison. So I was just getting any kind of odd job to just fulfill the, you know, requirements. So this pastor and mentor was like, hey, you got more, you know, more potential than that. Just, you know, he said, why don't you take this card? My wife's a processor at a mortgage company. Go in, they hire commission only as loan officers. I know I did what that was at the time. And so I literally went in and they hired me as a loan officer, as an LO with a 70-30 commission, 30% to me, small side. But I was able to refinance my grandmother's house and refinance my aunt's house in the first 60 days and made like $6,000. And now, so that was exposure I got to the industry. Like, oh shit, there's actually something outside of the streets that make real money.
You know, isn't that funny? Sometimes some other person sees something in you that you don't see yourself.
That's a fact.
All right, so
and that's usually the case.
That's usually the case, yeah. It happened to me, and hopefully I've done it a few times to other people. It's so obvious to me and another person. The other person doesn't see it at all, and it happened to me the other way around in the same way, and it looks like it happened to you. And so now you're on a different track.
Yeah, yeah. That's why mentors are so important and coaches are so important, right? Advisors. So that exposure helped me get on that right track. And the second part helped me get on the right track was it was pure self-belief, right? It was like at 2005, I was on a street corner in Newark, New Jersey, on South 10th and Springfield, and I was like overseeing a heroin dealing operation. And I was 25 years old. I'm like, Jay, where are you gonna be when you're 30? I'm like, bro, you got 3 felonies in 3 different states. At 25, you're still selling dope in Newark, New Jersey. These guys are carrying guns. There's Bloods, there's Crips. It's like, bro, what are you doing with your life? So I just literally was like, are you a hustler or are you a drug dealer? If you're a hustler, you can hustle anything. If you're a drug dealer, you only can sell drugs. And I really just challenged myself, like, nah, man, like I'm bigger than this, I'm better than this. And I was like, what would it be like if that's 10 years at that point, 15 years old to 25 years old, that I was literally a drug dealer. Like, that was my vision, that was my goal, that was my vision board, right? That was like my aspiration, was to be my town's biggest drug dealer. Like, that was, par none, that was my, right?
So you looked at the highest version of that. You're like, all right, I want to be that.
I want to be the kingpin. Like, I want to be the Frank Lucas. Like, I want like all that. Like, and that's how we ran our operation. Like, I want a big operation. I mean, I was at 17, I was making like $5,000 a week, right? So I'm calculating how many weeks I got to go to $1 million, right? Like, I'm always like, I want to be a millionaire, right? It's like all of us. I just thought I could make $1 million selling drugs.
You were an entrepreneur with visions and a plan, like everybody else. It just so happens it was an illegal thing, but really, the mindset and the things you went through were with you at an early age. Maybe misguided, but you probably learned a lot.
Man. Yeah, it was the same thing. It was commission splits. It was inventory. It was marketing. It was giving out samples. It was top of funnel. It was all of that, man.
But then you put yourself on another track.
Yes.
And I study this sometimes with
God did.
Yeah, God did. Yeah, no, I understand.
God did.
I understand, but you got to take a first step also. He's not going to do that for you. I understand. That's a good point. But when you trace back the first step that someone takes in a different direction, it all comes with a decision that someone makes in their mind. Like, what was the decision that you made? Do you remember the moment or the time when you said, no, I'm going to walk in this direction?
Yeah. And you know what? Definitely popped back to me when you said decision, and also with like self-worth. The thing is like, I felt I was better than the outcome that I was on track for. Like, no, like, I'm better than that. I'm bigger than this. I'm better than this, right? So I see more of myself, probably for the first time in a long time. And that moment was, I walked away for that day. Like, I didn't say, you know what, I'm gonna get one more flip in, or when I get to this number, I'm gonna quit. I literally had that epiphany, that real personal realization moment. And I literally broke my trap phone. I had like 2 ounces of coke left. I gave it to one of my partners, my dope I had left, my heroin. I gave it to my other partner. I'm like, yo, I'm out, y'all got it. And I literally just quit the dope game.
What happened?
Like 30 grand left.
What happened there? What happened there? Because your entire life shifted in that very moment. Like, was it was it just simply a moment of grace? Was there some kind of trauma? Like, what happened in that moment?
Well, you have to realize that, like, I literally come from like, excuse me, I come from standing on welfare lines with my mom, and I come from like the free lunch tickets in school, and I come from like the hand-me-down clothes and like real poverty, right? Like lights off, like heating your household by boiling water, So when I realized that, but then I seen 6 figures as a drug dealer, right? So I changed my family's dynamic. So I became the man, but I had a blue-faced Submariner Rolex at 17. Like, this is early, right? I had a Lincoln Navigator cash paid at 19 years old with no license. So like, I had done phenomenal things from my worldview at that time. And so what I was saying is, like, if you're this phenomenal of a guy, Cartier Roaster, right? Like all this stuff, I'm in my early 20s. So if you're this dynamic, that this operation, I was employing my cousins. I was like, all this, I had a drug trafficking ring from New York to Baltimore to Maryland, all sophisticated stuff, 8 cell phones, all of this. If you're this complex of a thinker and you have this much potential, then it was the moment for me to be like, all right, prove it in something else. and do it in somewhere your mom can be proud of you. Do it somewhere your daughter, a daughter at 18 years old, I'm a teenage dad, and like do something your daughter can be proud of instead of going to her father's, father-daughter days at school and lying to everybody about what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a sense of pride then that really just kicked in, was like, you know what? Let me challenge myself and let me go be a better version of myself.
You know, it requires a lot of reflection. I obviously sat there and you thought about things. And many people don't do that. They don't sit there long enough and think, where am I currently going? And if I keep on a path, is that where I want to end up? Is that the destination I want? And you obviously did that, though you had actually a pretty good life, at the time. But now, if I remember correctly, so you took this mortgage job in like 2005, if I'm keeping track right. And in 2012, you were the real estate expert on the Today Show.
Yeah.
What happened in 7 years?
Yeah. So my first mortgage job, 2002. I did it for like a year, graduated parole, then dumped it, went back to the streets. 2005 is when I had the final epiphany of like, you know what, let me try that mortgage thing, that real estate thing full time. So in 2005, decided that seed that was planted in 2002 that I liked. I liked the financing. I liked the numbers, the points. I liked the commissions. I got it. It was business, right? And I liked real estate. I liked the appreciation, all that. So I got real serious about it. And the same energy, the same 24/7 mentality that I had in the streets, like I would do drug transactions that call me anytime, right? I'm never asleep. I'm always gonna get up for the money. So I took that same mentality to real estate. So it's like my clients, like there was no like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you can't call me. Like, no, we're talking about money, call me. So I just took a real serious ambition to it, but not just the practice of marketing or business development or building a pipeline, but I learning. I literally soaked up knowledge and I just cuffed under mentors, and I just gleaned and I just extracted like all this intimidating information, everything from proper business etiquette to speech patterns, to greetings and salutations, to email signatures. I never had an email before. I had to learn how to work an email for the first time in 2005, 2006. So like, these are all new concepts to me, but I literally just engulfed myself in it the same way, 16-year-old Jay engulfed himself into how do you break down a gram of cocaine and bag up 520s and how do you put it to the block, right? So I just approached it with a real sponge-like mentality, and I executed. I had a lot of, my risk tolerance is higher than most people because my day-to-day life for 10 years would cost me my freedom or my life. So like investing only with your credit or investing with real estate, right? It's like the concepts that we have in business and real estate, they don't like turn my stomach. That's not real risk to me. And so I was able to approach the business just like a real informed but yet aggressive way. And I also understood verticals. So like I was a loan officer first, and then I closed my first 2-family house, and I saw commissions the realtor made, and then I got my real estate license. And then I got my next 2-family house and started building my real estate portfolio. But I was getting commissions as a loan officer and as a realtor, not on just what I purchased or financed for myself, but now I was Mr. Real Estate because I had this like wealth of knowledge of financing or I had access as a realtor, but then I also understood numbers and returns as an investor.
So you got into real estate, through the brokerage and the loan side of things. And it sounds like you started buying some rental properties as well, those single family houses.
From the very beginning. Yeah.
How many of those did you do before you started shifting?
Oh man. Probably 30 to 40 transactions on the acquisitions or wholesale side. Probably 3.5 million or so in real estate holdings, and a lot of transactions as a loan officer. And I became a branch manager, actually. I managed 2 mortgage branches. So I rose a branch manager and had teams under me in 2007, 2008. But I'm saying all those things prepared me to work for Sotheby's in 2012 as the first African-American male hired by Prominent Property Sotheby's in Bergen County, and list a $10 million French chateau in Alpine, New Jersey. We didn't sell it though, but I did get the listing. And break into these markets and become a celebrity realtor on NBC and a real estate expert for Today's Show. All that was just like a body of work of me being just so immersed in the business, right? I just like was really immersed in the business and had all those years of just my life experiences take with me.
Now you have a fund now that you have as well. You've raised,
Yes.
I don't know, a good amount of money for that fund. And
Mhm.
why did you do that fund? And tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so through all my time in mortgages and investment and development and just being a real estate entrepreneur, I often or always had to always go to someone else for capital, right? And many times we went as a African in America minority, they say, like we had to go to outside of our community in order to get capital, right? Where a lot of times some communities can invest right within their own community. And so as gentrification was happening and as we understood the need for capital to really fuel the development of our communities, I was like, well, what would it look like if we were able to come together and have small micro investments, so like democratize capital raising and allow the non-accredited investor and the accredited investor to invest together, right? And in small micro investments, but not a GoFundMe where you just get like a t-shirt, but we actually have equity and ownership, right? In the company. And so at the time of us thinking about that, the Freddie Gray uprising was happening in Baltimore as well. I was on the ground there in activism. And we're really trying to figure out like solutions for our community. Like, what can we do to do something for ourselves? And we were like, well, let's try to pull our resources together and do all the things we say should be done. Like, let's go do the work. And so at that time, President Obama had passed the Jobs Act. And as we had this concept of leveraging my brand on social media and other partners and that we've had and members of this movement, we were able to launch this Reg A Tier 2 fund. And we formalized it in 2016, got the SEC qualification in 2018, launched June 1st of 2018, and raised several million the first week of the fund. We offered $500 minimum investments for 10 shares or units of our company, $50 per share. And we're able to go out and deploy capital and invest in these assets and be a co-syndicator on projects throughout the country and really figure out mass level crowdfunding and fund management, where our fund has over 15,000 partners, right? There's 15,000 LPs in our fund and members. So managing all that is something very, very new, and we've done a pretty good job at it. We've had some things we could talk about in a second in regards to the obstacles even in this fund, but it's been a great journey so far.
Jay, how do you scale to 15,000 members? That's insane. That's a lot of reach.
It's a lot of K1s.
Yeah, I bet.
That just postage for those K1s is somebody's yearly flip.
How do you reach all those people and get them on board? What would you do different than a lot of people out there?
Yeah, thanks for that question. What has separated me has been my level of online activity and content creation and all that we do, but also grassroots participation. And so I've held to date approximately 65 corner classes where I've literally taught real estate, credit, business on street corners in inner cities. I've been to 34 cities. I've taught a 24-hour corner class on the west side of Atlanta here, where I got up at 6 a.m. and I taught a class every other hour on the hour, 12 classes in 24 hours straight. I never left the corner. And so like I gave back and sowed a lot of seeds into the community, over 1,000 YouTube videos, a lot of viral actions, but then like a lot of people seeing me actually doing the work while I'm teaching as well. And we have our school, Jay Morrison Academy, and our real estate roadmap program. But yeah, it's a lot of a mix. A lot of people do stuff online and gain followings and followers and blue checks and verifications. But when you have touched the people like in their community, in their environments, that's where you kind of get that swell of like real like support and vision
So
share.
you basically you hit them from a few different angles, and I'm assuming the street corner stuff probably had a lot of word of mouth impact. And then did you also leverage that, I'm assuming, through a lot of social media activity and just kind of utilizing those platforms as well?
Yeah, the social media for sure was our medium for dispersing the message, but I think one of the key points is mission, right? The mission was aligned And that resonated with the people because they all had a like mission. We were giving them a vehicle. So I would say this for like even smaller syndicators, that syndication, that multifamily apartment complex, that 10 unit or that 110 unit, it's a vehicle for somebody's financial investment, for somebody's financial freedom, for somebody's legacy piece. So we have to look at our syndications, our SPEs, our LLPs, our LLCs. We have to look at these as many vehicles. What we created with Tulsa Real Estate Fund was just a massive vehicle, but it allowed everybody to share in the ride of the vision and the mission of the fund.
Yeah, your mission is to bridge generational wealth gap. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, what keeps driving you every day?
It is, I believe, in solutions. And I think that, again, exposure, education, and information, and then intentionality can literally help balance what I think in our generation now, and just like this climate of America, I think we all kind of got it at this point, right? We all kind of got that there's an imbalance, there's inequalities, and it's like, okay, well, what can we all do, right, to have a justice and liberty for all, right? So for me, it's like, I believe in self-accountability. The same thing that got me off the street corner, right? Like, I mean, I grew up to a teenage mom. I had a screwed up environment. I had 3 felonies, so I could easily say I can't do real estate with 3 felonies, right? I could have bowed out and made excuses to not better my life. But I believe in self-accountability because at the end of the day, it's my life. So if my life ends up screwed up, that's not, y'all don't care. That's on me. I gotta live with that. No matter how jacked up my obstacles have been, right? And so same thing goes for a community or for a country. No matter how jacked up the experience has been, if we want the outcome to be a better outcome, we have to do better things. We have to do right, like new work. And I just believe that things really can change and really can shift, and that I could be a part of that shift.
So one thing I noticed about you, Jay, is that you have this ability to dream up an idea and then put it into motion. You know, you've got so many different things working. What do you think really contributes to your ability to do that?
That's a great question. I think that, okay, on a high level, philosophical level, like, it's our duty as when God gives us these visions and these purposes and that nudge, that burning desire, that unction, it's our duty to execute and to tap into that. I think what's allowed me to do it so much in my life is what I call a BBBP. It's having a burning desire, having big bodacious goals, being intentional about those goals, and persisting. And that's really like addictive to me. It's like dopamine to me. Like, I love manifesting things, right? Like, I love taking an idea and a vision because I've done that early on in my life. Like, so like I watch myself visualize being unpoor or visualize myself being in a different position. And same thing, even with the NBC and a celebrity realtor, like I barely became a realtor by the skin of my teeth because of the 3 felonies. I had to sign petitions and get reference letters and all kind of stuff. So then to become a celebrity realtor on NBC is like, I've seen amazing things happen in my life. And so I literally was like going to the Today Show and I'm like, yo, I can't believe this. Like, I literally know how to like cook crack, like in a microwave and a stove. And they're like, let me on NBC. This is cool. So just seeing those kind of manifestations happen in my own personal life, I believe that it can happen on a much larger scale as well. And I believe that if we just dream bigger, that we can do bigger things. I think a lot of times we limit ourselves, and I just think limitless.
What are you visualizing right now for yourself moving forward?
$1 billion of assets under management.
And what difference would that make to you or the world?
Knowing my heart, knowing my financial aptitude, and knowing my intentionality, I believe that we can circulate way more dollars to underserved investors, developers. We can rebuild neighborhoods the right way, rebuild communities the right way. I don't believe that community development, like, you can't have community development without building a community. If all you're building is the real estate, and if you only flip the real estate but don't flip the people, or you only develop the real estate, don't develop the people, like, it's a counterproductive community development. So I believe that we can execute community development. I believe we can help bridge the wealth gap and just provide more opportunity and resources, man. Like Don People said, capital is a very true quote. It's like capital is the fuel to real estate and entrepreneurship, man. It's a capital flow. It's about how much capital we have access to. And I think that as our firm can help provide capital to minority developers and investors and get into great syndications with those of all walks of life, I just believe it'll open more eyes for people. Like we have people that have invested for the first time in their life who may only have 10 shares in our company, but they've owned an apartment complex through our company. They own a Class A commercial building through our company, right? They're a part of that. And so giving people that opportunity to participate in ownership in these kind of asset classes is, legacy work.
So Jay, this question just comes from my experience. So I actually owned 300 rental apartment units in the south side of Chicago when I first got started. That was kind of my background. So I've seen how those types of investments differ from the stuff that we're doing now. But one of the things I saw consistently and just kind of coming from, the background you have and your knowledge and experience, I'm just curious what your take on is how Section 8 is kind of looked at. Is that something that you view as something that's a positive thing for people in these types of communities? Do you think that it's all screwed up and sideways, that people have these programs available? I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a duality to it. There's a need for assistance, right? Government assistance, especially in our poverty neighborhoods. But better, more comprehensive assistance would be also empowering those people to be able to get in position to really do for themselves and create incentivized programs that allow people to actually have some carrot to get off those programs, right? And be able to assist themselves. And I believe in self-security, not social security, right? So we want everyone to be self-sufficient at the end of the day. So I believe that from a perspective of a social perspective, but I do believe that, and I advocate for folks not taking advantage and being lifetime government assistance where they don't need to be, and not using it as a crutch. It has literally crippled families because a lot of times for those programs, dads aren't allowed to be in the house if you want to be on those programs. So it literally keeps families apart at sometimes. From a real estate investor standpoint, we like it because you're getting top market rents many of the time. If you screen your tenants well, you can still get some decent tenants. Right. So
but they incentivize it weird. That's the thing. It's like it doesn't force people to want to get off it.
Right.
And they're incentivized to have more children, to get higher rent amounts, live in a bigger place. And so I'm dealing with that a lot. I thought it was so backwards in that format. Whereas I agree, I think there definitely should be support out there. But the way it's set up is not for everyone to win in these communities. And that's what made me sad. As I was like, okay, it's great for me as a landlord to get these vouchers and to get the residents in there, but then they didn't appreciate the homes that we were in, and they'd go and destroy them. On top of it, they were incentivized to just, not have as many kids as possible so they could get into these places. So I think the methodology and the way that it sits, I think that's screwed up. And I agree a lot with what you just said as far as how that goes.
Yeah, and I think another point to it is they sometimes I know people personally, and my family has been through it personally, where they get into a crux of like, I want to get off of this program, but housing is this expensive, and I only can make this much money, right? So if I make more than 28,000,
yep,
I go off assistance, but this job is only offering me 32,000.
Yep. They can't bridge it, and
that 4,000 delta, I can't survive. So you know what? I might as well just.
Yep.
It's an easier play to do a side hustle, to babysit, to have a paper route, do a cash business, and try to make some other money for my family cash and get the government check and chill, because it's so hard to earn my way over enough to have a decent life for myself. But here's another trick though. Section 8 can be used for actual housing, not just renting.
Right.
So that's what we teach, is to get people in position to where using a Section 8 voucher to actually own a home then you can participate in the equity. You can
That's
even own
cool.
a 4 unit with your Section 8. So you can literally own a home, live in 1 unit with your Section 8, and rent the other 3 units out as a Section 8 person. So you still can start in the game off the voucher.
So Jay, you've seen a lot of success with real estate, doing all kinds of real estate as we talked about. But if you look back on your own experience and you were to advise someone, maybe in some of the underserved communities that you're serving, what advice would you have to them with regards to life in general, but maybe real estate specifically?
Yeah, I just think, you know what's cool? Even from an urban or corner trap or urban environment, these principles really apply to all of us at different levels. We reflect that environment as to what like our current trap is. It might be the college trap. It might be the corporate trap, as we talked about. And if we look at it, we all have like environment obstacles on different levels. And I think one of the first things is understanding the power of real estate. But I think one of the first, no, excuse me, I'll take that back. The first thing I would give someone is understanding money, even before the real estate, and understanding that you can create so much wealth for yourself and opportunity for yourself when you understand the opportunity cost of money. And that from middle class to wealthy to uber wealthy, people, companies, firms, etc., family offices, pension funds, all we know, institutions, they're all trying to figure out how to make money move faster and to make more ROI greater than where the money is currently sitting at, right? And I say that for someone that's like from an urban environment trying to get into real estate perspective, understanding that if you can make yourself a value add to all the money that's out there that's looking to earn more money on their money, if you can make yourself a vehicle and a value add to find opportunities that they want to invest in, that give them tax advantages. That's why we love real estate, right? It gives us tax advantages. It gives us equity, gives us appreciation, and it gives us cash flow, right? So these are all financial benefits that if you understand, even if you're broke, even if you come from a rougher background, or even if you're from bankruptcy, divorce, whatever you're going through in your life, if you can understand how to be a value add and bring ROI, decent yielding ROI opportunities to people, individuals, families, firms with money, you can always create wealth for yourself out of thin air. Like that's one of the first things I always tell anyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love what you're doing because there are, in this business and syndication business specifically, it tends to be white male. Okay. Really, there's very few women, very few minorities in general. And I think it's because there's so few role models, right? So many female role models, so few minority role models. So I love what you're doing, man. You're serving as a role model to all minorities, really. And how can people connect with you or find out more about what you're doing?
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And connect with me, Mr. Jay Morrison, on all social media platforms. Website, mrjmorrison.com. That's Jay. Instagram, YouTube at Mr. Jay Morrison. Subscribe, follow, all that cool stuff. And we have we do have a free training. If you go to my Instagram, Mr. Jay Morrison, click the link in bio. There's a free training there for all our real estate folks.
I love it. Great having you on the show, Jay. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.